how I think about emotions, how I find it useful for leaders to think about emotions, and introduce a new practice that we will do a few times today. You can, if you have access to a printer, you can take the PDF cards on the left and print them out. If you don't, you can take any piece of paper or Post-its or something like that. And as I'm explaining these 6 basic emotions, what I would like you to have at the end is that you have cards like this one with 2 words on them. And if you want to print these with the nice images, that's fine. But you can also just write something like this. And I'm going to tell you after my explanation what we're going to use these cards for later. Why are we talking about emotions in a leadership training? 2 main reasons. When you don't understand your own emotions well as a leader, they will overwhelm you at some point, and that will limit your leadership capacity. If you are, for instance, at some point outraged, you're not a good leader anymore. If you're overwhelmed by fear or sadness or even joy, and you're not good at noticing or regulating these emotions, then your leadership capacity will be impeded. And you might actually be dangerous to people at some point. The other reason is we are working with human beings, and human beings have all sorts of emotions all the time. And if we don't understand those emotions, and if we don't understand what they are for, and how we can use them, how we can use our emotions to our advantage instead of being overwhelmed by them, and how we can use the emotions of the people that we work with in order to move towards our goals, towards our purpose, then we are missing out on very, very essential pieces that we need to integrate into our work with human beings. So the first thing I want you to know about emotions is that they weren't invented by God to embarrass us. We currently have a culture and a society where emotions are mostly embarrassing and awkward. And having them is awkward and embarrassing already, talking about them even more so. And all of this is twice or triple as true for the men in the room than for the women, because fortunately you get, at least on average, you get more opportunities in your life to learn to have conversations about emotions and to learn how to name them and how to feel them and how to maybe get something like empathy for them. Many of us don't get that chance or don't get it often enough to actually become fluent in this. So when you look at what actually happens, emotions are neurological messages. They are hormones, chemicals in the brain, and they evolved over millions of years. Most mammals share the basic emotions we have as human beings. They evolved for a purpose. So two basic concepts I want to introduce here. And one is the concept of emotions having a scale. It can be very strong, or they can be very weak, very intense, or very low in intensity. And just with these basic 6 emotions, just as examples, because I think they are relevant for leadership, think about what's the purpose. What is this emotion for? What does this emotion want to do in my system? And how can I use it well? So starting with the scale, it's fairly obvious what emotions you're feeling when you're at the top end of the scale, when you're overwhelmed by the emotions, where you break down with fear, or where you faint or freeze, or when you're outraged, or when you're just dancing with joy and you can't do anything else but dance because you're so joyful. And then there's a low end of the spectrum where you're unconscious of feeling anything. And I'm sure you've met somebody, maybe you've seen them on screen, where there's no gap in between the two things, where somebody appears to be entirely calm and the next second you have their fist in your face, or their fist is in somebody's face. For some people, there's no gap in between the unconscious and the overwhelmed. So the purpose of this conversation and the purpose of the practice we're going to do with these cards later is to create a bigger gap, to create a bigger area on the spectrum where you are conscious of the emotion and where you can use it, where you're not yet overwhelmed, but you're already conscious and you can do something with it. The interesting thing about this space, this conscious space, is the more you do what we're going to do today, talk about emotions, feel emotions, be conscious, specifically in naming emotions, the more this grows. It's like a muscle. And the interesting thing about the muscle is when you explore the left area, the one that's moving into the unconscious, so when you become more conscious of the very low intensity emotion, the other end of the gap grows as well. So by exploring when you get a little bit angry more frequently, so that you notice when somebody's a bit irritating, something's a little unnerving, something's a little not right, and you notice a little bit of anger starting to work in your system, when you become more conscious of that and you make that a practice, you will get less angry on the other end. You have less likelihood of actually attacking someone or just not knowing anymore what to do because you're so angry. So that's the basic thing, and this is true for all emotions. Now let's focus on specific ones and look at what they do for us. And the first thing I want to focus on is on the emotion that happens to be connected to breathing out or sighing. When you consciously, most of you have your mics off, so you can do that. Just take an out breath, like maybe with a voice, and you will notice that you trigger an emotional state in your system. We're doing that. An emotional state that when you make it more intense, will release more liquid with the air that you're exhaling, first through your mouth and then also through your eyes, because this is what sadness is. Sadness is the emotion that lets stuff go from our system. It's the releasing emotion. And the purpose of that is to get us back into flow when we are stuck. So you could see that as a purpose or also as the gift of the emotion. So when you are using this emotion well, or when this emotion is working well in your system, it gives you flow. There's a partner emotion of this, which is the emotion that is connected to the in-breath. When you do something like, it's fairly obvious. The opposite of letting stuff go is to be fully present, be fully in the here and now. Imagine a tiger would slowly walk into your room. This is what you would do, right? Your hair stand up on your skin. You're fully alert. You're not thinking about any colleagues anymore. You're not thinking about any tomorrow anymore. You're just here and now. You're fully focused. You're fully present. And the gift of that is you maximize your intuition, because fear is what kind of clears the way for us to access our intuition. And when you think of this pair, fear and sadness, and I know this is confusing because we're not afraid all the time, and I don't want you to be sad all the time. But when you think about, for instance, grabbing a doorknob and just briefly releasing everything you're leaving in the room that you're leaving, and then you're opening the door, and as you open the door, you do, and you focus on what's ahead. You focus on your intuition, you focus on your intention. Then you're using sadness and fear. You're not afraid and you're not really sad, but you're using the emotional systems in your body, the same chemicals, just a lower intensity, to release what you leave behind and to be focused and intuitive and intentional about what you're meeting. So the practice that you could integrate into your day, and this can be when you lift a glass or when you lift your coffee cup, It can be the door, it can be a window, it can be every time you stand up or sit down. Just find some trigger that you can link this to, and just briefly, maybe twice, maybe 3, maybe 4 times a day, just integrate this practice of, and just consciously let go, right? You're letting go of oxygen, you're letting go of some carbon dioxide, some water, in these times, probably also some viruses, but you're also letting go of stuff that's on your mind, stuff that's on your heart, stuff that's blocking you. So for instance, Bettina, to just pick up on your example, right? When something disturbing happens, and then I need to go into a meeting where I need to do something, I will take a minute and breathe, just let the air do its job, and let the breathing trigger these emotional systems in my body so that I know how to let go stuff. And my body knows how to do that, because these are like evolutionary ancient things that our bodies know how to do. So sadness and fear, flow and intuition are kind of the things in the moment, right? You can do that all the time. And the next line, I'm looking at this flip chart. The next pair of emotions that play together are anger and shame. Because anger and shame are the guardians, the sentries of our boundaries. Anger guards my boundaries against attacks from the outside. Shame guards my boundaries against attacks from the inside. If something happens that is wrong, if you do it, it will make me angry. If I do it, it'll trigger shame. If I violate my own rules, shame is guarding me from doing that. If you are violating my rules, then my anger is going to guard you from that. Very simple example to feel that. Imagine you stepping into an elevator that's a little tight, and another person is already standing there. So you need to get fairly close to them, closer than arm's length. Like your personal space is about an arm's length around you. You feel entirely comfortable and free when nobody's within that space. In an elevator, it's socially acceptable, of course, but it's also a little uncomfortable. So you are entering their space, and you feel a little bit of shame because you're getting a little too close to them. And now imagine you are the other person. You are in the elevator door opens, you're not yet at your destination, and somebody steps in. And you feel this little amount of anger because they're stepping into your space. This is how these emotions work. They guard boundaries, and they make sure that our boundaries work well. The words that you can see on the outside in gray on the flip chart are the things that anger and shame guard us from. Shame guards me from carrying regret. If I continue to violate my own rules, if I continue to do something that I consider to be wrong, I will carry a lot of regret around me, and that's going to drag me down. If, on the other hand, I let you do things to me that are violating my boundaries all the time, and I don't stop you, I will carry resentment, and that's equally going to drag me down. So anger and shame are emotions that keep me in that healthy space in between, and give me space, that give me my integrity and my power. Anger has another quality. Anger also gives you direction. There's no other emotion that lets you move into a specific direction as anger. Anger mobilizes all your power, it mobilizes all your energy, and then it gives you drive towards a certain direction.
Olaf, I have a question.
Yes.
Do you have all of these functions of emotion somewhere described, like briefly as you said them? I find it fascinating.
I have this written down somewhere because I got the same question in the last training. Most of what I've told you is from a book called The Language of Emotions, which is on the bookshelf.
Okay. But like on a brief, like the way you explained it now, it's super useful, and I don't want to read an entire book.
Okay. Absolutely. I'm happy to cut those 10 minutes out of the recording and give you the audio of that. So coming back to leadership. So as a leader, you want to be present and engaged all the time. This is where this intuition, flow, sadness, fear thing helps you to ground yourself, to be present, to be focused, to be in the moment. Anger and shame are the two emotions that you need to master to create a safe space. Because as an individual, I want my anger and my shame to create my integrity and my power. But if I'm a leader and I'm responsible for our whole group's performance, my anger and my shame needs to be big enough for the whole group. It sounds weird, but let's just take examples that we've already mentioned yesterday. We have talked about rules that apply here. We have talked in our leadership alliance. We have talked about what we do and don't want to do here. So if I consider myself a leader of this tribe, if somebody does something that's violating our code of conduct, it's my shame that's going to stop that. Say, hey, that's not what we do around here. Our integrity is in danger, and I need to take care of stopping that. Similarly, if somebody else came in and would do something in our Zoom room here, I would need to stop that. My anger needs to be big enough to keep all of you safe. And my shame needs to be big enough. And I know these words sound weird the way I'm using them now, but my emotional system needs to be well developed enough so that my integrity is good enough for all of us. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And this is why I've chosen these emotions for leadership, because these four, to me, are the most crucial that you need to pay attention to and to actually grow your own awareness and capacity in. The next two are also important, but they're kind of on top of those four. Joy is the emotion that binds us together. Joy is the emotion of community and belonging. So if I want to form a tribe, the best emotion that I evoke in myself and in you is joy. Because joy brings us together. And then a bit of a controversial one, envy is the emotion. And for those of us who have some level of Catholic history in their biography, I know it's a deadly sin. I'm one of those people. But envy is the emotion that shows us what we want. Google is doing this amazing thing. Can we do something similar? That's a little bit of envy, kind of healthy version of envy. Obviously, there's a sin somewhere on the spectrum, but this is true for all of the emotions, right? If we get overwhelmed, we can do bad things driven by probably any emotion. But on the smaller scale, on this conscious, like, that's something I want. And I'm going to tell you what I want, and I'm going to ignite you with what I want. This is our classical model of leadership, right? I gather a tribe and I show you the direction. And obviously in new environments where we don't have this authority difference anymore and this expectation that one person is going to lead us into something. We were discussing yesterday when Jonathan asked about the leading into the unknown and danger. We do want something different now, but inspiring a group to want something and to go there together is still something that we associate with leadership. So these are the 6 emotions I would like to practically explore a little bit in this course. And the way I want us to do that is that we pick these 6 cards. If you don't have 6 cards by now, take a minute to write some. And that then a few times during the day, we'll just pause. I assume you remember the pause button that I mentioned yesterday when I explained the leadership model. And just check in with ourselves and look at what's alive in me right now. And this is also the reason why I want you to write the word pairs like this, because within the context of this course, and hopefully within the context of most of your leadership, you will not feel anger alive in you, but you will feel connected to your power sometimes. You will hopefully not be afraid very often, but you will hopefully be connected to your intuition often. So I'm using the gifts of the emotion, the purpose of the emotion, to help us tune in with the emotion that's behind it. So what's alive in me right now? I'm just talking out loud what I'm thinking. I'm not expecting you to do the same. It's just a modeling of an internal process that I want you to do as well. So I currently feel very much in my integrity, very much in my power, and I am connected to my intuition. And what I would like you to do is just make the same internal question. What's alive in me right now out of these six things? Maybe it's one, maybe it's two, maybe it's everything. And just hold up the cards so that you signal to us that you're done with that reflection. And it's not important to read what's on the cards. That's not the purpose. We don't need to, and it's not important to explain it. That's also a nice exercise, but a different one, and maybe for a different course.